Listen closely, because what I'm about to tell you has never been spoken aloud beyond these walls. Not on the news, not in books, not even in the secret Vatican bulletins whispered between old cardinals in the dead of night. No one, except you, will know this truth. It was supposed to be the holiest night of the year, the Grand Jubilee concert, when the world's greatest pianist was invited into the heart of the Vatican, into the golden candlelit halls of St. Peter's itself, a man whose fingers could move nations, charm royalty, silence kings. But when he sat at that sacred piano before the Holy Father himself, before Pope Leo XIV, he did not play a hymn, he did not play a psalm, he did not honor the church. No, he mocked it. He mocked the Pope. A smirk curled on his lips, and under the watchful eyes of Christ on the crucifix. This man, this master of music, struck the keys with a twisted version of Ave Maria, warped, broken, dark. The cardinals froze, the crowd gasped. You could feel it in the air, the weight, the silence so heavy it crushed the soul. All eyes turned to the Pope, to Leo XIV. What would he do? Would he rise in anger? Would he condemn this blasphemy before the world? Would the Swiss guard seize the insolent musician and drag him from the sanctuary? But no, my friend. Pope Leo XIV did something no one, not the cardinals, not the choir, not even the bold pianist could have foreseen. He smiled, and then, slowly, quietly, like a shadow moving across ancient stone, he stood from his throne. The air grew cold, the room grew dark, and the Holy Father, the Vicar of Christ himself, walked to the piano. Silence, not a word, not a breath, as if heaven itself had paused to watch. And when Pope Leo XIV sat down, his old gentle hands touched the keys, and what poured forth from that ancient piano was not a hymn, not a prayer, not a song ever meant for human ears. It was the lost song of the Templars, a melody forbidden by time, by history, by the Church itself. A song of prophecy, a warning, a key. But this is only the beginning. Before I reveal what really happened that night, before I tell you why 2 cardinals fainted in terror, before I uncover what the pianist saw, before he vanished forever, drop a dear in the comments if you believe in holy justice, and subscribe, because the truth is only for those who seek it. And you, my friend, you were meant to hear this. Stay with me. The darkness is about to speak. It was the night of the Vatican's Grand Jubilee concert, a night meant for reverence, holiness, unity, a night when the greatest musical mind on earth, his name, carefully erased from every Vatican record, deliberately hidden, was called to play before the most secretive man in Christendom, Pope Leo XIV. The crowd gathered thick in the ancient chamber, noble families in the front rows, diplomats behind them, cardinals lining the walls like crimson shadows, watching, waiting, whispering prayers beneath their breath. They all expected music that would lift the soul, a hymn of glory, a psalm of peace. But the pianist played something else. His fingers, slender and pale, hovered over the ivory keys, trembling not with reverence, but with quiet, deliberate defiance. And then he pressed down. The sound that came forth, not a hymn, not a song from the holy archives, but a melody that felt wrong. It started softly, like Ave Maria, but twisted, warped, bent into something dark, something cold and mocking. As if the Virgin's song had been dragged through ash and shadow, distorted by the weight of some ancient sin. The notes fell heavy, like stones into the silence of the hall. Cardinals shifted uncomfortably in their seats. A few made the sign of the cross. One old bishop near the altar bowed his head, not in prayer but in fear. Because they all knew. This was no accident, no mistake. This was a challenge to the Church, to the faith, to the Pope himself, and the Holy Father. He sat still as stone. No movement, no flicker of surprise. only the faint tightening of his fingers around the silver cross on his chest, the ancient pectoral that once belonged to Pope Sylvester himself. The very cross believed to have been kissed by Constantine on his deathbed. The pianist's smirk widened, his head tilted as if daring the Pope to rise, to speak, to stop him. But Leo XIV did nothing. The crowd held its breath. Eyes darted between the Pope and the man at the piano, waiting for thunder, for judgment, for wrath to pour from the throne of Peter. But the thunder never came. Instead, something far stranger did. Slowly, as if waking from some holy trance, the Pope stood. His robes, ancient, woven with threads of gold from the vaults beneath St. John Lateran, whispered softly as he moved. He did not speak. He did not command. He simply walked, down the marble steps, past the trembling Swiss guards, toward the piano. The pianist froze, his hands lifted from the keys, his smile cracked just a little. Because this was not what he expected. Not anger, not banishment, but something older, something colder. The Pope reached the piano, and without a word, he sat. The hall darkened, the candles flickered, even the breath of the crowd seemed to die. And then, he played, but not a hymn, not a mass, not any song known to the world outside these sacred walls. It was older, darker, a melody buried for centuries beneath Vatican stone, a tune forbidden by papal decree since the Council of Vienne, when the last of the Templars burned at the stake. The lost song of the Templars, the melody of warning. Those who knew the old prophecies, the forgotten pages of the Codex Leonis, recognized the tune at once. Their faces paled, their eyes widened. Two cardinals fainted, one collapsed silently to the floor, the other gasped, clutching at his chest, eyes rolling toward heaven, because they knew what this meant. The melody, the rhythm, the strange broken intervals between notes. They were not for beauty. They were not for worship. They were for a single purpose, a message that could only be unlocked by those who knew the old language, the secret tongue of the Templars, the keepers of the hidden gospel. A gospel too dangerous for the world to hear, and in that moment, they realized something terrible. The pianist knew it too. He had come not to perform, but to test, to challenge the Pope, to force Leo XIV's hand, to see if the old man remembered the song that should have been buried forever. But the Pope did remember. Oh yes, he remembered every note, every pause, every hidden meaning, because he had heard this melody before, long ago, as a young priest, in the catacombs beneath the basilica, where the walls weep with forgotten prayers. He had stood before the broken seal of the Templar vault, and from the darkness, he had heard this same song, played by no living hand. Now, he played it again. His fingers, slow, steady, moved across the keys with impossible grace. Each note struck perfectly, each chord resonated with power, as if the very stones of the Vatican trembled beneath the weight of their meaning, and hidden within that melody, like threads of light woven into shadow, was the truth. The lost prophecy, the reason the Templars vanished, the reason the Church erased their memory, the secret that could destroy the foundation of Rome itself, but only those who understood the music could unlock it. The pianist paled, his smirk faded, his fingers twitched, uncertain, afraid. He had not expected this. He thought the Pope would refuse, forget, falter. But Leo XIV had remembered, and in that memory, there was power. A quiet war was being fought that night, not with swords, not with armies, but with music, with ancient knowledge hidden in sound. And when the final note fell, ringing like the tolling of some forgotten bell, the room stood frozen. No applause, no movement, no sound but the fading echo of the Templars' song. And then, the Pope spoke. 6 words, quiet, deadly, echoing off the marble like thunder in the tomb. The key is now turned. What did he mean? What door had he opened? What prophecy had begun to unfold? No one knew, not then. But the fear in the pianist's eyes told the truth. He understood. He knew what he had awakened. And by morning, he would vanish, gone without a trace, erased, like the song itself. But the melody still hung in the air, still haunted the Vatican halls, still whispered in the dreams of those who heard, and something ancient, something terrible, had begun to stir beneath Rome. But this is only the beginning, my friend, because what the Pope unlocked that night was not meant for this world. And soon, very soon, the final note will fall. By sunrise, the Vatican was no longer the same. The chairs were still in place, the marble still gleamed, the angels still looked down from their painted ceilings with those same frozen smiles. But something had changed, not in the walls, not in the air, in the silence. The kind of silence that knows too much. Because sometime between midnight and dawn, the pianist vanished. No security footage, no witness, not even a breath of wind disturbed the cloister gate. His name was quietly erased from the guest list. Every program was collected, shredded, and burned. The master recording of the night's concert, missing. Even the backup drive kept in the Jesuit archives was found melted. Yes, melted, still inside a fireproof safe. But one thing remained, a note, written in a woman's hand, delicate, shaky, as if penned in haste or fear, found tucked behind a statue of Saint Cecilia, the patron of musicians. Just 10 words. The keys are not for playing, but for unlocking. No signature, no name. But Vatican insiders believe it was written by her. Sister Domenica, the deaf nun, she who hadn't spoken aloud in 20 years, but whose silence had never stopped her from hearing things no one else could. And on that night, as the Pope played the forbidden song, she wept. Not from sorrow, not from beauty, from recognition, because she had heard that melody once before, in a dream shared by every nun in her convent, on the same night, at the same hour, 5 years before Leo XIV was even elected Pope. That dream, a voice crying out from beneath the Vatican, when the lost song is played, the walls will bleed secrets. Now ask yourself, what kind of song makes walls bleed secrets? What kind of melody makes cardinals faint and pianists vanish? What kind of tune makes the Pope himself break centuries of silence and speak a line known only to the Grand Master of the long-buried Templar Order? The key is now turned. That phrase, it appears only once in church history, in the margins of an untranslatable scroll buried in the Archivum Secretum, a scroll sealed with a wax crest that predates the Vatican itself. No one knows who wrote it, but beneath that single phrase, faded in red ink, is a question. If the key turns, what does the lock reveal? Now, let's go back. Let's go back to the night of the concert, to the exact moment the Pope's final note fell. Because something happened then, something no one was supposed to see. The ancient mosaic above the altar, the triumph of the Lamb, it shifted. Not visibly, not physically, but spiritually. Witnesses say the Lamb's eyes, always gentle, became fierce. Its mouth, usually closed in solemn peace, now appeared to open. Some claim they saw blood trickle from its side. Others, they say the mosaic didn't change at all, that what changed was them, that the song unlocked something inside them, buried memories, waking visions, a sense that everything they thought they understood about the church was only the surface, a veil. And Pope Leo XIV, he knew it. He had known it for years. This moment, this night, this song, it was not spontaneous. It was not a reaction. It was prepared. The challenge from the pianist, foreseen, the melody, memorized, the prophecy, already unfolding. Because long before that concert, before the pianist ever received his invitation, before the Vatican even announced the Jubilee Mass, the Pope had been writing, late at night, in his private chamber. No light but candle. No companion but the ticking of a 14th century Templar clock that survived the fire of Avignon. He wrote letters, sealed in wax, unsent, addressed to no one. But the titles on each envelope: the keeper of the keys, the listener of the seventh chord, the guardian of the vault beneath the dome. No one knows who or what those titles refer to, but one of those letters was found 2 nights later, on the Pope's prayer bench, opened, and inside, a single sentence, written in the Pope's own hand: "When the melody returns, so too will the silence." What silence? What was he waiting for? What had he awakened? Some believe it's a reference to an ancient order, older than the Jesuits, older even than the Benedictines. An order that does not speak, does not write, only listens. The order of the final note, erased from church records in the 1500s, thought to be a myth. But their seal, 3 vertical bars crossed by a single horizontal line, was spotted, burned faintly, on the underside of the piano Leo XIV played that night. So now you must ask yourself, was this concert just music, or was it a ceremony? Was it a message to the pianist, or a warning to the world? One thing is certain, that final note wasn't the end, it was the beginning. And somewhere, beneath the layers of Rome, in tunnels forgotten by time, where marble meets dust and echoes never die, something has begun to stir, something that has waited for centuries, for a key, for a song, for a pope brave or mad enough to play it aloud. And now, it's awake. The silence is breaking. Next up, what really happened to the pianist, and what Sister Domenica wrote in her forbidden diary, the entry she was ordered never to reveal. And what of the pianist, the world's most celebrated master of music, gone, not dismissed, not deported, erased, no flight records, no hotel checkout, no Vatican footage showing him leaving the Holy See. Even his passport, his real identity, vanished from the global registry. It was as if the man had never existed. But there was something else, a whisper, a rumor, one told only among the oldest of the Swiss Guard. A junior guard, barely 2 years into his service, claimed to have seen something that night, long after the crowd had gone, long after the Pope had returned to his chamber in silence. In the deepest hours of the night, in the shadow of the Clementine Hall, he swore he saw the pianist walking, but not alone. 2 figures, hooded, faceless, leading him down the Scala Sancta, the holy stairs, the very steps that Christ himself once climbed in Pilate's judgment hall, now hidden away, never meant for mortal feet again. But they led him down, not up, down into the earth, toward the catacombs of St. Calixtus, toward the crypt of the popes, where the unmarked tombs rest, where the silence breathes. The guard spoke of the scent of old incense, the flicker of ancient torches, the strange hollow music echoing far below. And the pianist, his face, the guard said, was pale, empty, as if whatever part of him was human was gone. He never returned. The Swiss guard who told this story transferred immediately to a monastery in the Alps, sworn to vows of silence. His name, too, vanished. But Sister Domenica knew, she always knew. The deaf nun whose silent prayers carried further than any voice. In the weeks after the concert, she grew restless. She wandered the Vatican gardens at night, barefoot, whispering in a tongue no one could place. Some say they found pages torn from her private journal, buried in the soil beneath the statue of St. Peter. I have read those pages. I have seen what she wrote. You will not find this in any library, not in the Archivum Secretum, not in the restricted shelves of the Vatican Library, because they were burned, destroyed. But I remember, and now, so will you. Her words: he was not a man of flesh. He was the third messenger. He came to turn the key. The song is not a song, it is the first seal. And when the first seal breaks, the gate of silence opens. What gate? What seal? The book of Revelation speaks of 7 seals, 7 judgments upon the world, but there was always rumor of an 8th, a secret seal, known only to the inner circle of the Templar Grand Masters, hidden from scripture, hidden from history, hidden until the night the piano sang. Some say the melody Leo XIV played was the code to unlock this forgotten seal, that each note struck in perfect harmony with the sigils buried beneath the Vatican, that the vibrations themselves, resonating through marble, bone, and dust, shook the locks loose. And if that is true, then something ancient is waking, something that has waited longer than the Church, longer than Rome. And Pope Leo XIV, he knew this, he prepared for it. For in his private chapel, behind the veil of crimson silk, hangs a single object, small, unremarkable, a key, black iron, carved with 3 lines, the mark of the silent order. No one has ever dared touch it, except him. The day after the concert, Pope Leo XIV vanished from public sight for 6 hours. No schedule, no witnesses. But there were sounds, deep below the apostolic palace. Old mechanisms turning, locks grinding after centuries of sleep, stone scraping against stone. What was opened, no one will say. But in the days that followed, the Tiber turned red for a night. The bells of St. Paul's rang 12 times at midnight, unbidden, and a shadow was seen, a tall figure in white robes, face veiled, holding a staff of bone, walking the empty halls of the papal apartments. It left no footprints. The guards who saw it, transferred, silenced. But Sister Domenica wrote one last line before they took her away. One final warning. The final note is not played. When it is, the world will hear the silence. You see, this is not about music. It is not about insult, or revenge, or scandal. This is about the end of a covenant, the unraveling of a secret so old, so terrible, that the Church itself was built to hide it. And the Pope, he chose to reveal it, to play the song, to turn the key, to begin the last prophecy. And now, the world waits for the second note, for the second seal, for the gate of silence to open fully. Will you be ready when it does? Stay with me, subscribe, comment key if you still hear the song, and prepare, for what the Church fears most is yet to come. The final note has not been played, but the story does not end here, brethren. No, this is where the circle tightens, where the truth sharpens, where the veil grows thinner than ever before. Because after that night, after the song of the Templars filled the Vatican's heart, something strange began to happen. The apostolic palace grew quiet, too quiet. The Pope cancelled every public appearance, audiences postponed, masses left uncelebrated. No blessing from the balcony, no word from the window. Silence. But within that silence, movement. Hidden couriers, slipping through side doors at dawn, ancient scrolls, carried from the Archivum Secretum to the Pope's private chapel. A single chest, small, iron-bound, unmarked, removed from the vault of the innocents, where no key was supposed to exist. And then, the rumors, whispers from the servants, of voices chanting softly beneath the Clementine Hall, of strange lights flickering behind the sealed doors of the papal crypt, of the old mosaic, the triumph of the Lamb, now weeping thin lines of red along its edges when no one watched. Even the Swiss guard grew restless. 4 resigned without explanation. 1 fled to a monastery in Spain, speaking only of the Watcher in White. Another one found dead in his quarters, a single word carved into his palm: Silencio. But the greatest fear, it came from the cardinals. 2 of them, old wise guardians of doctrine, called for a secret conclave. To discuss, they said, the mental state of the Holy Father. But they never arrived. Their car, traveling the quiet Roman streets at dusk, disappeared. Gone, no trace, no driver, no wreckage, as if the night itself had swallowed them whole. The Vatican called it a delay, but those who knew the old prophecies knew better. For the Codex Leonis, the forbidden book locked beneath the Lateran, spoke of this. When the key is turned, the song of silence begins. The guardians of the old order shall fall, and the Watcher shall walk. What is the Watcher? No one will say, not the Pope, not the surviving cardinals, Not even Sister Domenica, who has vanished into the darkness of the monastery of the Veil, never to speak again. But the signs are clear. The first seal is broken. The song has begun. And somewhere, in the labyrinth beneath St. Peter's Basilica, a second piano waits, untouched, silent, but not for long. Because the Pope left behind one last message, found in the margins of his private missal, 6 Latin words, burned into the page. Secunda clavis cito, verget aperire. The second key will soon turn. And when it does, the gate of silence will open. The world will hear what heaven tried to bury. And the Church, the mighty eternal Church of Rome, may never recover. This is the prophecy Pope Leo XIV unlocked. A melody not of peace, but of warning. A tune not for man's glory, but for the end. And you, dear seeker, you have heard its first notes. Now you must choose. Will you look away, or will you listen for the second note? Because when it sounds, there will be no turning back, no escape, only truth, cold, terrible, beautiful, and final. Stay awake, stay watching. For the next revelation comes soon, and the final note has not been played yet. Comment key if you still believe, and subscribe, because the darkness has only just begun to sing.